just in case that affects your desire to have your cameras on. But I want to pass it over to Jean because I'm very excited and honored to have her here as our teacher today. Hi, Jean. Thank you for being here.
Thanks. Yeah, awesome. I'm just really excited. I'm honored to be here, and thanks everybody for joining whether it's I'm going to say tonight because it's 7 o'clock here in New York, but where you are, it could be 7 in the morning, 9 in the morning, what have you. So Bethan, thanks again for inviting me and for hosting just an incredible week. So tonight, the theme for the day is creativity, and I'm hoping this session kind of sparks some creative thinking and creative exploration for you in your nature journal. And specifically, I want to talk about values and the theme of values added. So the materials you're going to need is your sketchbook, a pencil, a pen, and if you have a small set of watercolors, that would be great. If you don't, you can improvise with whatever it is that you have. So you're welcome to sketch along with the things that I do, or just watch. And then the session's recorded, so if you want to come back and watch again later, you certainly can. So I was thinking about values added and the word values. And in the art world, of course, values is this scale of from light to dark. But then I also want to play with thinking about what we value about nature journaling, and what we want to put in our nature journals. So tonight I want to talk about both of those things. We're going to do a couple of exercises on that theme, and then, yeah, if you have questions along the way, please put them in the chat. And Bethan's going to monitor that. And so she'll ask questions if you have stuff as we're going. Feel free to put it in. And if it's, she'll either interrupt me or we'll get to the questions. And then if there's time at the end, we'll also have, we can chat together as well. Okay. So I want to start by thinking about this personal values. And what I'd like you to do is just take, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, and I want you to make a list of 3 to 5 things that you value about nature journaling. Things that I want you to think about. Why do you journal? What draws you in about the subjects you choose? And just make a list, write down a few things. And while you're doing that, I'm going to transition to a different screen. All right. So now what I'd like you to do is in the chat, just put in a couple of things from your list if you're willing to share. And what I'm hoping we'll see is that there might be some common things that you value. There might be things that one person has that you never thought about. So I think it'd be cool to just start to put that in the chat. So a lot of times I think like I think of my nature journal. It's a journal, it's a journey. It's about my connection with nature. It's about my journey as an artist. And it's kind of the combination of those two things. So I'm seeing, these like some great stuff in here: understanding, learning, sharing, slowing down, looking, discovery, things like that are the things that we value. And so I want to talk first about like, how do we convey then what we value in a journal? Because a lot of times a nature journal is, it's focused on learning, right? So I'm going to show you a couple of things that I value and kind of how I convey my values in my journal. So this is a learning page, and it's about, wild columbine, looking at this plant and learning about the different kinds of animals, critters that rely on it for nectar, for host plants, things like that. So lots of, when I started nature journaling, it was really all about learning about nature and recording those observations. But I also really value beauty. And so when I'm nature journaling, sometimes that's more important than learning about the thing I'm looking at. So I love this quote: "The bees care for the allium if you don't. Hear them now doing their research, humming the arias of a honey opera." So this page is more about the beauty of being out one evening and seeing these flowers and things coming to them. I also value capturing experiences. So I was in New Hampshire and I had this great idea with spring, and I thought, all right, I'll capture these beautiful wildflowers. They're out along the trail. So it was like lady slippers and trilliums and these amazing things. But it just happened to be black fly season, and it warmed up, and suddenly, like, I was just swarmed. Anytime I stopped to draw, like, suddenly the black flies were just all over the place. So I felt like, that's what this page is about. It's about my experience of being outside in nature. And I want to capture that on the pages. Another thing that I really value is joy and gratitude. And so some of the pages of my nature journal are about that. I love this quote from John Milton. So this is from the 1600s. "Hail, bounteous May, that dost inspire mirth and youth and warm desire. Woods and groves are of thy dressing. Hill and dale doth boast thy blessing." And what I really liked is thinking about, here's John Milton in the 1600s enjoying May and finding like the wonder and beauty in it, just the same way that I am. And the people all over the world throughout history, like there's something about the month of May that just comes alive. And so how do we capture some of that joy and a gratitude that we have this new season of rebirth? Or I suppose that depends if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, but you know what I mean? It's like spring, joy. So that's another thing I like to record in my journal. But mostly I think I like to share wonder. And so here's Mary Oliver: "Pay attention, be astonished, tell others." And I wanted to pair this with the lowly parsnip, which, you might think like, is this really a worthy subject, parsnips? But I love these. Like, look at those roots. They just dance on the page. And I wanted to convey that I could be excited about something like a root vegetable. I could put these words on any other pages, but there's something kind of nice about pairing being astonished with something that's super simple. So I would like you to think about, do you convey your values in your nature journal? Do you want to? So there's a scale of like light to dark and an artistic value, but you could also create a scale in a nature journal that is kind of like, one is observation on one end, and it's maybe scientific facts about things, and the other is very personal. You're all in your nature journal. And so, where are you on that scale? Like, are you down here? Are you way up here? Where do you want to be? Do you want to have everything? Is everything okay? So I think of a nature journal like it's about nature, but it's really about you. So I think your nature journal should be a reflection of what you value. And if your nature journal is all scientific observation, awesome, because you value learning and, like discovering what's out there in nature. But it could you could decide your nature journal is all about personal, like you want to write poetry, you want to just have it be about your connection and make it, that way. So I guess I just want to kind of open up that idea that your journal is for you, it's about you, and you can be anywhere in that perspective. But sometimes I see nature journals, or I look in like the nature journaling groups, and I feel like I see people struggle with, is this right? Should it be beautiful? It shouldn't be beautiful. It should be this, it should be that. And I kind of just think it can be whatever it is that you see in the moment. It should be a reflection of what's important to you. And whatever is right for you is what that journal should be. So what I'd like to do now is look at the scale of light to dark stuff, and we'll do some sketching there. But maybe in the end, on the work that we do tonight, I want to try to think about different ways we could convey, something that's factual versus something that's personal in the journal. So I had Bethan send out a handout. And if you don't have it, I'm going to try to show it on the screen while I'm working, but there's only so much room here. So if you do have it, great. And I'm going to use just a pad of watercolor paper tonight. But typically when I'm journaling, my go-to things are my journal and a pen. That's like what I mostly go outside and use. Super easy. It's really contained. I can carry it anywhere. I don't need anything else. Great. If I want more, then I probably bring a pencil. I might bring an eraser, but I rarely start in pencil. I almost always start in pen. Just saves time, and I'm kind of like it better. I might bring watercolor paints, and this is what my paint box looks like. And I do sometimes use a water brush, though I don't love them. So I have a variety of small water containers, this size, this size. And so depending on what I'm painting, I can get a lot out of this. And sometimes I start outside and finish inside. I almost always do lettering afterwards when I'm inside. Not always, but it's just easier for me to do that at a desk. So that's kind of the basics of my sketch kit. All right, so let's look at this in terms of values. So the reason I want to do this with you in part is because when you see the values and you convey them in your drawing, what you're drawing is going to really take shape. It's going to look much more dimensional if you have a good range of values from light to dark. So let's look at the beads for a second. Maybe I'm going to put them there so there's a little less glare. All right, or you can look at yours. So when I'm looking at this, I start the same way I start any subject. I just start by looking, and I say, all right, what's the shape here? What are these objects? What interests me about them? And I start looking at, before I draw, before I add any, well, I'm going to draw just this one. So, so I'm just going to crudely put this in. It's got this stuff. Okay. And I love the roots, so okay, just stick that in there. Okay. So I start by looking at the shape, and I kind of rough that in. But then if I'm going to paint, I'm looking at like, what is the value? So the lightest lights are kind of right here. What direction is the light coming from? It's going to come this way. So it's hitting here, and the darkest dark is right in here, tucked right in that between these two. Look at how dark that is. And you can see then the contrast between how light it is right here next to the darkest darks. But then also notice, so it's darker over on the right side than it is on the left. We see that. And And there's a shadow that's behind. So one question I sometimes say, is the shadow darker than the object? Is the object darker than the shadow? How do I know that? What do I see? And then I look at, if you look at the edge of the beats, there's a little bit of a glowing light between the beat and the shadow. So that's a little bit of reflected light. And that's something that you can put into your sketches. You see it on all three of them. If you look closely, it's right there. It's really, it's faint and it's right along the edge. So let's take a pencil and our beat and just make a little value scale. So if I wanted the lightest light, I'm going to make 4 boxes here. And they're about 1/2 inch, just you can make them any size. So the lightest box, I'm just going to leave nothing in it. The paper is going to be what I'm going to use for the lightest light. Then I'm just going to shade in a little bit. In this one, I'm going to make the shading darker in the next one. And then my darkest value, I'm going to really press hard. And darken that in. Okay, so you could do 4 values, you could do 10 values from light to dark. But I think if you have kind of a range of 4 or so, you're pretty good. So let's take this beat. Here's the lightest part right here in this area. And the darkest part was over here because I had this other beat that was coming in. So let's note where, and you can just kind of shade it in pencil, just like that. That's one technique, and I'm just going to kind of do it a little sloppily here because it doesn't, we're just trying to get the concept down. And I want to kind of remember that there's that little bit of bounce back. So I don't go all the way to the edge. Maybe I'm a little bit careful there. And I leave just a little bit of light. And then I get darker over here and darker here on the bottom. And then when I get to this edge, it's pretty dark in there. You can go in different directions with a pencil. You can go in one direction, whatever you want to do. And then if you notice right under here, it's dark again because that's in shadow right underneath that. So that part of the beat has got to be dark. And then I want this to sort of, it's a round shape. So the way the light hits is almost like concentric circles going around. So you can kind of do that on the curve almost. Now, you could spend hours on this kind of shading, and some people do, and it's great. But for tonight, we're just going to bang in the concept. So is there a way the image can be enlarged? Not so sure. This is probably what I can do, but let's. Okay. When you're looking at something like this too, you can start to say, all right, this is lighter than this. This little one is lighter than this. This is lighter than this. This is behind, and you see the shadow. So sometimes, when I'm drawing something like that, I'm always asking, which is darker, which is in front, which is behind? How do I know that? And that's how I figure out kind of where those values are and what's going to be light, what's going to be dark. Okay. Okay. All right, Bethan, any questions about this so far?
There's just been a question about your sketchbook. So a lot of people are mystified by which sketchbook to buy, and we're wondering about what you choose as your favorite.
Okay. I'll tell you what I choose, and I'll also say I've tried lots and lots of sketchbooks, and you probably should do the same thing until you find what really works for you. This black covered one is a Stillman and Byrne, and it's a Zeta series sketchbook. So this paper is really smooth. It's like a hot press paper. Here's why I like it. I really like to draw in pen, and the paper is smooth and it doesn't eat the ink. And so it's really good for that. However, if you're learning watercolor, it could be really super frustrating. It takes watercolor and you can do, all kinds of stuff with it, but it's not forgiving. It's a little more, it's just a little more challenging to do with watercolor. I've learned how to use this paper, so I like it, but it may not be for everybody. The other thing I really like about this journal is that I like a hardbound book, because then I just feel like it's sturdy and I like this size. But when I started journaling, I loved the ring bound sketchbook because I could open it all the way, and that was great. Here's another sketchbook that I really like, and this is a new one for me, and this is in the this is a handbook journal. Here, can you see that? Okay. These come.
This is actually my favorite of all the ones that I've tried. I've settled on this one. I like the square. They do different shapes, but I like that you pulled that one out, because I find it a really good balance between a nice paper for writing and something that takes watercolor.
Yep, me too. I've been really happy about it. So I'm testing this paper. This one is the watercolor paper, and it's 140 pounds. So it's nice. It really is good with watercolor. It's nice for ink. I feel like it's not eating my pens. The paper holds up well. And it's sturdy. And I like this little, thingamabobber that, that ribbon is nice. It's got a little thing in the back that you can put, doodad, whatever you want in. So this is good. I like this paper. It also, this kind of a handbook also comes in a 90-pound sketching paper, which I've also used a lot recently, and I like it. It's not as sturdy, and sometimes you can sort of see through the pages. So I think I personally like this one better. And like Bethan said, it comes in a lot of different sizes. So, but I do think you've got to figure out like what journal is right for you based on what materials you like to use. If you like tons of water, then you need a paper that can really handle that. If you don't like to work with ink, then you don't have to care about the texture of the paper at all. You can use anything you like. So yeah, so that's a long-winded way of saying try some different things. I've also tried the Stillman and Byrne Beta books. They're a little bit more, the watercolor is nice on there. They're more forgiving for watercolor. They eat the pens a little more quickly than the Zeta journals do, but they're nice too. Some of the other books I don't use as much just because the paper is more textured. So it doesn't work as well for me. I also like paper that's pretty white instead of some papers like some of the Strathmore books, a little bit creamy on the paper. I just don't care for that as much, but it's not, I mean, the books are great. It's just great. So it's kind of what you like. Okay, so let's keep going here. So one thing I want you to think about is when you do this, there's some basic shapes in nature, and a circular, round kind of shape you see all the time. It's any kind of, it's fruit trees. It's, I don't know what else. like there's lots of round things out there. And so it's helpful to kind of have a sense of how values are on a round surface. It's a bird's egg. It's the breast of a bird is sort of round like that, right? So you need to have a sense of the very lightest lights to the darkest darks. Some other shapes that are really good to think about are things that are a cylinder shape and things that are a cup shape, like that. Those are other shapes that you see a lot in nature. Something that's a cylinder, it's every limb on every tree. It's the tree trunk. It's the stalk of an anemone. It's lots and lots of things. So if the light is coming in this direction on these objects, then you have to say, all right, where's the lightest light and where's the darkest dark? So the lightest light might be somewhere right in this area, and then it starts to shade darker. And you come over here, and it's darker along that edge, and it might be a little bit of something on that edge. And then if there's a shadow, it'll be over this way. And the shadow too will be a little darker as it's closer to the object, and it'll get paler as it moves away. And you can do this with pencil, you can do it with pen, and you can do it with paint, and we'll try to do all three tonight. If you have a cup shape and the light's coming from this direction, right here is going to be in shadow inside the cup because the light is hitting the rim, but it's being blocked right here. And so this part will be dark, but it'll start to get lighter as it goes to the other side because now the light is hitting that area. And you can take a cup, a teacup or something out of your cabinet and look at it under the light like this. And if you do this, then the light is maybe hitting right here, and that's light. And then it gets darker over here. And this edge right here. And again, you can leave a teeny bit of reflected light there along the edge if you remember to do that. And if you don't, it's not a huge thing. And then if you have a shadow, it's going to come out sort of that way. So again, and you know, just by sort of pressing down with a pencil, that's how you're going to get there. All right. Okay. Jean Mackay Gold. Thank you, Judy. All right. So there we go. Now, what is this? This is a bird nest. This is a tulip, right? Here you go. There's your flower. Any kind of flowers that like do that, you got to have something dark in there or it's not going to look like it's dimensional. And a lot of times I think when you're starting out, you're a little timid. And so you go medium. You get light and you get a middle value, but you miss this because you're like, either you're afraid you're going to wreck it. And sometimes you might wreck it because you go too dark. But more often I see the opposite, where people stop right here and they have these values, but they don't come back and say, where is that really darkest dark? So if I'm looking at that beat, I'm like, all right, did I get it? Or is it really even darker right here between those two things? Do I really need a little bit more there? Can I get darker? And most of the time you can get it a little darker. Or let's look at this little thing right here. It's dark right here. So before I finish any page in my journal, I say to myself, am I finished? Or do I need to go darker? Do I really have the full range of values? And if this is something you need to practice, make one of these and put it in the back of your journal somewhere, cut it out, and you can do this with pen and you can do it with paint, and you say, let me hold it up, and you look and you say, did I get some darks in there or did I miss that? and then you can come back and add them. And tons of times I feel like, no, I didn't get there. There's just something missing. And when I put in, it's not like I'm going to go back and do the whole thing darker. I'm just going to go back and do part of it darker. All right, so now let's look at the mushrooms. And this time we're going to jump in with a pen. Okay. So now we have a cylinder and we have a cup that's upside down. And those two shapes are this mushroom right here. Okay. So we have the light that's coming again from the left onto it. And so here's the dark side right there. And then underneath, this is dark because the light's hitting here, but it can't reach in there. It's dark really right here because it's in the shadow of the stalk. So this is almost the darkest area, and it starts to get a little lighter there. This side of the mushroom, little bit brighter than this one. And this side, same thing. So let's try drawing this and we'll see how it goes. So I just kind of start by looking, and you could start with I'm going to start with this stalk part. And it's got this kind of nice, this is the veil of the mushroom. So that's an important little thing to notice if it has one of those. And then let's see, I often look at like how far up is that cap from the stem? How far out does it go? For the sake of tonight, let's just kind of ballpark it in. Nice.
Jean, this is a good question. Pat asks, would you get down to this level in the field and be sketching like that? Or would you, with a mushroom, for example, usually take a photo and do it at home?
Oh, I love it in the field. It's awesome. Yeah, I'm right down on the ground. And it's so excellent because look at this photo. Like it's okay. I mean, it's well lit, but I just only have a little bit of information. I can't really see what's happening under that cap. I don't know whether the top is slimy or not. I really got to look at this thing. So I definitely do mushrooms in the field, and I sit right on the ground and draw them.
Love that.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. Or, like a small stool will enable me to stay a little longer. I'll show you a mushroom page from my journal in a minute because.
Great question. Great answer.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jen.
Yeah. But, I really do like to at least start outside because I feel like I have so much more information. So let's note, like, here's something that's kind of interesting. It's got this stuff right on top, these little things. Okay. So I want to note that because they might be important. So this page, this little mushroom, I want to know, let's just say, okay, I don't know what it is. I'm curious about it. And so I want to note some of the things like this ring and the fact that look at this ring around it. It has these little ridges. So let's note those ridges. And I don't have to draw every single one, but a few of them I'm going to put in. On the stalk itself, it's got like a little bit of texture. So I might put a little bit of texture in here, just in the pen. All right. So that's just kind of like the shape of the thing. But we could put the values in, or at least some of the values, we could put that in pen. All right. So the other thing I want to notice is like, what is it growing in? Because that's important too. And I can sort of scribble that in. Okay. So if you're going to do the values or some of them in pen, let's do the same thing we just did. I'm going to just do small boxes because I want this to kind of be fast. So the first one is the lightest light gets nothing. The second one, I could just kind of put some lines in one direction, and then make the lines closer, and then make the lines quite close for the darkest value. Another way to do it with pen is kind of the same idea. And in this one, we're going to crosshatch so you can do lines going the opposite way. And if you space them, the lines pretty close together, you know, you can get pretty close to a really dark. And then another way that's useful is to do dots, except dots are very time consuming. So you might have this, and then the dots are closer together, and then the dots are really close together, and you eventually get to like a really dark. I like using this dots when I have a very light subject, like maybe a mushroom, where I don't want it to be black, but I do want to have some dark in there. The other thing that you can do, so I have an 02 pen here that I'm using, and I like that, but I also have, I have an 005, and these rubber bands are just here because they tell me which pen is the newest one in my box. So it's just, that's a little note for me. So the 005 pen makes a lighter line. So when I have a light subject, that's what I like to use. So I might put in a little bit of light line along this edge and under here. Look at that shadow right underneath the top of the mushroom. This is definitely darker than what's above it. And I could put a little bit of shading right there. And then how about underneath here? It's dark in there. Which is darker, behind or the stalk? I think behind. So I want to make that dark. It's dark along this edge where it's being shadowed. Gets lighter as it goes out there. And same on this side. It's definitely darker on this side. I think I'll just go to my larger size to show that. But I like the subtlety of that 005 pen. I feel like it's really great, really useful. And sometimes I just want to note kind of some of the values. I might put some of them in pen and then come back and do watercolor. So you can already see like this side is very heavy with this, and this is a you know, a small nib 02. If I was doing something like, if you have a bigger one, it's heavy, but I like, you know, I like to put a little bit in. Then I'm looking at like these little, they're part of when the mushroom breaks open, it has a veil, and it leaves behind these little warts, and can be a little bit of a shadow underneath them because they're raised. They're not just totally flat. So I might come in and put a little shadow there underneath those things. And then look at this little corner of darkness down here where the mushroom comes into the ground. What if I do that? Put it in there, and it makes the grass come in front. And it anchors that mushroom right in there in a really nice way.
Jean,
So
someone was surprised that you started from the ground up. Is that your usual way of sketching a mushroom, from the bottom up?
I think it's often the way I do plants, is from the bottom up.
That's interesting.
But not always. So I'll try from the top down on the next one. Okay, so with something like this, now let's say this is going to be a sketch we want information. So maybe we want to note like that it has scales on the top. It has this veil, that there's gills underneath, that it's growing in moss. The cap is dry. that there's a little bit of texture here. I might also note like the size of the thing. So I might, I often will carry a small, just a little ruler with me. And so I can put it down right next to the object on the ground, measure. So I want to note, like, is it taller than it is wide? Is it as wide as it is tall? So this one, you know, maybe I would just say it's 3 by 4. I'm just making that up. And then I could go to a field guide and try to look up this mushroom and find the title. And then I can start to find more information about it. So this is kind of, you know, you're very much more typical, like a field notes, right? In a nature journal. And I love this kind of page for mushrooms. I feel like I just, I have a lot of mushrooms in my yard. And so here's a page that is about, you know, going out, finding a mushroom and just really looking at it from different perspectives, different angles, taking it apart, cutting it in half, because all these facts about mushrooms lead you to figure out what it is. And it isn't until I do like all this stuff, cap is slimy, it has ridges, it's very wet, all these kind of notes, then I can look up the species and learn more about it. Same kind of approach with this one, different mushroom, but I wanted to say like, all right, here it is when it's first growing, and then it does this, and then it starts to do this. And so it's like that life cycle of a mushroom. But then sometimes I just want to do this and be like, all right, there's suddenly like 20 different mushrooms in my yard. And I just want to kind of record the explosion of these, of like how many mushrooms there are, like there's just more and more and more. So now I'm not really caring so much about the species. I mean, I care about the species, but I'm wanting to convey that sense of wonder now more than just the field notes. And that's what having something like more for me, it's that's what I'm wanting to share. So that's a bit of mushroom page. All right. So now with let's do one more mushroom. How are we doing on time? Yeah, we're good. And this time we're going to paint it. So I got to get a different piece of paper here. So I'm gonna, this is a big one of these handbook journals, and I'm gonna just switch over to this. It's almost too big to have on my desk surface, which is why I didn't use it to begin with, but you'll at least see how this is going. All right, so this one now, let's take a look at this mushroom here. Okay. And I think again, I'll just sketch it right in pen, and then we're going to use paint for this one. But if you want to do pencil, it's fine. Pencil and paint, ink and paint, it's all good. So again, I want to start by looking at this thing. And so Beth, and here's one thing, like if I start in the middle with the stalk of the mushroom, I can make sure that I get the cap kind of sized to be with the stalk. Sometimes it's narrower at the top than it is at the bottom, sometimes not. All right, and then we've got, this kind of a cool thing coming out. And now the nice thing about mushrooms is that they're fairly forgiving. So as a subject, if it's not exactly perfect, it's kind of okay. And especially tonight when we're just sort of drawing on the fly. So, you can see I've made this top way too big, but maybe I'm going to correct that right now, and it's all right. So I do want to correct it because maybe when I get figuring out what this mushroom is, I'm going to have a hard time if I've really got it wrong. So if I'm drawing right in ink, I just go right over until I kind of get it where I want it. And then I'll show you what I do with that. All right. So one possibility is to just take my pen and do this. I make some crosshatch lines over it. And this is a light mushroom on a dark background. So I'm kind of making that background dark right now. And at the same time, I'm defining where the edge of that mushroom is. Sometimes I do that with paint instead of with ink. But for the sake of this, okay. All right. And then it goes like that. Okay. So this one, now look at where the light is here. It's coming from this direction. All right. It's hitting the mushroom here, and this is the light edge. Here's the dark edge. It's got this shadow being cast by the stem of the mushroom right here. And there's this shadowing right there underneath that veil. So again, sometimes, especially if I'm not painting right in the field, I'll just do this. I'll just kind of come in on that edge and I'll darken it with my pen. And I'll suggest that's where the darkness is so that I remember. I just put it in a little bit. And maybe I even just do this. I make this edge darker. I double the line there just as a kind of a reminder that that's where the light's coming from. Other times I might do that. And that's just like a really simple, subtle thing that says that's where the light is. And is that enough information for me to go home and paint? No, it isn't, because I really want to get some of these little warts on the top drawn in. There's a lot of texture on this mushroom. So I'm going to just put that in. And I see that like, it's not even all over, but it seems to like go a little bit in a pattern here of where it is on the top. And it's coming down this side, and there's almost like a little line right there. Okay. Now, this mushroom does have gills. Not all of them do, but you can just kind of see on it that there are the lines of the gills. Now there again, I just think I want to step down the pen because I don't want those gills to be super dark. I want them there. I want to note them. I don't want to draw all of them, but I do want to do a few of them anyway. And there they are. And one thing that's kind of important when you're doing mushrooms, this is just a mushroom lesson as well, I guess, is how widely spaced these gills are really important in identifying the mushroom. So you might want to note, you know, that the gills are closely spaced, or if you've drawn them closely spaced, then you'll know that that's how they were, and you can look that up. This one too has like these little, it's kind of ridged, and I have not looked up what this mushroom is yet, but I'm quite certain that if I did, in the description, it would say that there's ridges on this. And it would say in the book that there's texture on the stem. So I'm going to draw it in, a little bit of that texture, just add it. Okay, so now let's get some values in there with paint. So with what's nice about a white mushroom is that you don't have a lot of color that we're going to be thinking about here. We're really thinking about what's the lightest light and what's the darkest dark. Okay. I really like these brushes. They're Escoda travel brushes. So that's what I'm using tonight. And they they come apart and they fit into the handle like that. So when you're out in the field, it protects the bristles, and then you just do that. So I have some different sizes. I have a 2, a 6, an 8, and a 10, and they have the red tape on them because I've had these a while, and sometimes this gets a little bit loose, this top part. So I tape it as long as this bristles are still really good, and these are, I just put some tape on there and it holds it in place. So that's what you're seeing there. Okay. I'm going to use a number 8 brush. And, you know, rather than worry about like, what's the right color for this, I think I'll just use a single color. I'm just going to use brown, just so that we can only paint, we're just going to paint the values here. So I'm going to leave the cap off for now, but if the light's coming from this direction, this part of the cap, you can see almost a little bit of bounce back on the way the photography was done. But this is the part of the cap that's darker. It's over here. And it gets kind of light on that side. So I'm not going to do too much there. Then right here, this is the part that's really in shadow. This is the darkest part, is right underneath here. And then it gets a little lighter as it comes up here. Okay. And this is dark right there. And then this side, definitely the darker side. And down here. And one thing you can do with watercolor, if you don't want the edge of your mushroom of like this to be what it's called a hard edge, you can clean your brush and just tip your paper a little bit and add some water to it. And it will soften the edge and just sort of pull it in this direction. You can make that even darker there, and it will bleed right through. See how that's doing that? But I'm leaving this part of it, nothing on there. There's some shadowing there. All right, then we've also got this shadow underneath here. So let's put that in like that. And this needs to be darker, so I'm going to add just a little bit more paint right here. Okay. All right, so I'm going to answer that question about inspiration in a second, but because this is a light mushroom, one thing to consider is to say again, like which is light, where's the lightest light? It's right on this edge, but in part we know that because this is dark out here and this is dark up here. So maybe with an object like this, maybe you want to have some value on this side. Maybe you want to put in some stuff on the ground. And I'm just using this single color because I want to just really highlight the values more than get into like a whole color thing. So now I could take that edge that I screwed up on, right? And I don't really even see it so much. And now I just see what's right. I see where I want that edge to be. And I'm good with that. Okay. So see how just like a little bit even behind on the lightest side behind it pops that mushroom right out. Okay. All right, so now this mushroom, this is about like discovery and wonder and what a cool mushroom. So now, like, instead of putting a whole lot of scientific information on here, like maybe we want to somehow figure out, like, so how can we express some of that element of surprise? One way to do it would be to pick some word that like is about your feelings of this mushroom and put it on the page somewhere. So maybe it's I don't know, maybe you want to say like, what a discovery. Okay, and then maybe you want to remember something about that discovery. So maybe underneath it's like you write, walking, on such and such trail, and that you came upon the mushroom, and, wow, what a find, and you make some notes about your experience there. And now your page it's different, right? It's different when you do this. And then sometimes I just finish off, I put a little border around here. It's not perfect, it's just a little something. Okay, like there it is. And it's very different. It's a different feeling than that. It's not that one is any more valuable or it's like it's not that one has a greater value than another. They're just different. And so I just want you to think about, like, when you do a mushroom, you come upon it, you draw it, think about, like, okay, why did I draw that? Why did I put that in there? What do I want to say about it? And you could also do both. You could put notes about this mushroom. You could look it up, put the name in here, and, a little bit of detail about it, kind of thing. So it's not always that you have to choose one or the other. You can have a number of things going on. I'm going to pause there for questions before we move to apples.
Jean, this has been so eye-opening and fantastic. I think you've just touched on so many different things. And one thing that I want to make a point of pointing out is that I love how you highlighted the values, our own inner values for something. And I, as a nature journal teacher, spend a lot of time teaching that it doesn't matter about pretty pictures. Always talking about, don't worry about pretty pictures. But you have pointed out, and I think this is a super valid and valuable point, that you value beauty. And so making a pretty picture in that case is perfect. And that brings you something deeper. It brings you to a place of connection with nature. And that is so valuable. So in that case, yes, make a pretty picture, because you are highlighting and honoring that beautiful thing you saw by making a beautiful picture about it. I think that's incredibly valid. And although I spend a lot of time saying it's not about pretty pictures, yes, it can be, if that's what deepens your experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it like I probably, like would fail on your scale sometimes about the pretty picture, because that, like, if I'm, like I'm teaching, I'm putting stuff on my blog, I do want to convey that beauty and wonder. And I want people to see something that they may never have looked at and say, like, wow, that's cool. I never thought like a piece of dried grass could look beautiful. But if I'm just, if I'm just wanting to learn something, of course, like it really doesn't have to be beautiful at all. But I think that's where like artistic skills come in too. Like sometimes, people are starting at all different places. I took art in grade school and some art in high school and some art in college. So I do have some background there that I draw upon, obviously, and I'm practicing all the time. And the more you practice, the better you get. But I certainly have like so many, you know, not beautiful, not pretty, you know, things that cause me angst kind of sketches in my sketchbook. So anyway, I think it again, like it's about what you want.
Yes. And what connects
feels right to you.
Exactly. What connects you the most with nature? If that's making things beautiful in your journal, then perfect, go ahead. And if it takes you away from that feeling of connection and joy, then that's when it becomes a problem. But if it brings joy, it brings connection, then that's excellent.
Yeah. And that might not be what, like, beauty is one of my values, but it doesn't have to be yours. Right?
I love that you brought in the value, our own values. Why are we doing this? This is so special and important.
Yeah.
Do you want to speak to who has been your influences?
Sure. And there was a question about this brown. It's just a burnt umber. I didn't mix it. I just used it's a, you know, kind of straight up paint in my box. So, I mean, I've had a lot of influences. I think I've, you know, read like some of the nature journalers that people know about. You just interviewed Claire Walker Leslie. I, you know, have a number of her books, Hannah Hinchman's books. I really have learned a lot from Kathy Johnson. And so I've learned a lot about techniques, about different styles. I find her very thoughtful in the way she approaches things. And I also really look a lot at nature journalers from history. So I look at what different artists who were kind of nature explorers were doing. And so I like Henry Walter Bates and the way he does moths and butterflies from the Amazon. And I like looking at stuff from the Lewis and Clark expedition. And I mean, I just seek out those kinds of things, both because it connects me to historically other people and other places who are doing similar things, and kind of that tradition of nature journaling and nature exploration that's been going on for a long time. Yeah, and why am I forgetting her name? I'll think of it. The English artist, naturalist, frog. She does a lot of toads and toad schools, and she's someone will think of it. Yeah. Beatrice Potter, right. You know, great. You know, beautiful stuff. So anyway, but I'm often really seeking out that kind of information and looking for that. So if I was, you know, I'm going to just come back to this page for a second, because the other thing that I want you to know is that you don't have to get all the values down in the first go around, right? This is just one layer of paint, and I did try to get, you know, basic values, but once this dries, I'm going to come back again and say, all right, now where else? I want to put a little shadow underneath each of these little things here so that they kind of pop out on the page. And I see that they are lifted a little bit. Okay. So I might look at that as a secondary kind of thing. I might come back and say, you know, I really want this a little darker underneath there and a little darker along that edge. So let me darken that value. And I might feel like, you know, this was dark, but I really want it to be even darker along that crease there. So again, like down here in the bottom, right close in, you can make some of that even darker and pick out a few more things down there. So this is layer 2. Oh, here's another one. Let's look at that shadow right underneath here. Right? That pops that veil right out. And there's a little touch of it right on the top too, not quite as dark, but just a little bit along there. So there's layer 2 of watercolor, right? Where you come in with I usually start even lighter than I did. I come in and do this, and then I let that dry, and I look again and I say, all right, did I get it? Or do I need to go even darker still? So I'm usually doing, several layers. And in this, we're just doing a single color. But think about, then the added challenge is like, well, what if this mushroom is red or it's multiple colors? So now I have colors and I have values, and I want to see them both. Sometimes it can be helpful when you're really trying to learn to see the values, to start with a value sketch, to start with something like this and do it you can just do it tiny. You could do it this size or even smaller, where you just block out the lights and the darks and use that as kind of a guide for when you're adding paint. Because a lot of times when you're painting, you're so drawn to the color that you can easily forget that there's a light and a dark value going on in there. Okay, so we have 20 minutes left, and I'd like to try at least a start of something that I think might be kind of fun for you to do on your own. And we're going to do it with these apples. So it's going to turn that page. Okay. So I want to draw these apples in about 2 minutes. Okay. So now usually if I'm out in the field, like this could be longer, it could be more detailed, we could be more accurate, but that's not the point. I just want to draw it. And I'm going to draw it in pencil. And then we're going to highlight the values in paint. And I think it's going to be really kind of a fun thing. So I'm going to start by looking. And one of the questions I'm always asking is like, okay, I got a complicated thing here. Where do I begin? So I'm going to begin with this apple because it's kind of like the one that's right in front and it's the most prominent. So I'm going to put this one in right here. And I don't necessarily even care that much about whether it's exactly right. I'm just going to put in, there it is. All right. Now I have this apple above it. So let's say I'm going to put this in. It's coming off of here. So this is going to go right here. And then here's the little doohickey there. All right. Now this apple on the right, I'm looking at this little tiny space in between the apples, and that's going to help me figure out where does that apple go. There's a little space there, kind of comes down here, comes out. And again, if your apples look totally wonky, it doesn't matter. This is just an exercise in figuring out values. Okay, so now I have 3 apples in, and I want to get this 4th one. Now let me see, it's sort of touching this one over here on the right, and it's tucked behind this one. So I'm going to put that one right here. And then it's behind the leaf. So there's these 2, and this one, it's got this little thing down here. All right, now let's get a leaf or 2 in here. So I got one coming off of here. And I've got this leaf that's coming right out of here. And you can use that sort of central vein to figure out a little bit of what that's doing. And then there's a little leaf coming over here. And I'm not going to worry about drawing every single thing of this drawing because that's just way too much for us. But maybe there's a little bit of something going on here that we could stick in there. Okay. And what the heck? There's that. And there's this. Okay. We're out in the orchard and it's excellent. It's a sunny day. I'm just loving being out in nature. I see the apples and I want to capture this and I want to have some value. I want to express what I value. I've got a quick drawing. And now we're going to paint this thing. And I'm going to use a pretty big brush. And again, I think what we're going to do is paint all one color. So you can pick any color you want. I think I'm going to pick blue. I don't know why, just maybe because it'll show up. So I'm going to pick ultramarine blue for my one color apples. So let's take a look at where is the lightest light on these things. You can almost see where there's like a little bit of shine on some of these apples. There's some really strong shadows, and that's really what we're going to paint. So I'm going to start by painting a lot of stuff that is not, if it's white, I'm leaving it. So what you may even want to do is take a pencil and note, I want to leave this. I want to leave this. I want to leave this is my lightest light. This almost this whole apple is light, except for that. All right. So I'm going to kind of paint very lightly, just about everything else. That's almost too dark. Really light. And at this stage, one apple can almost flow right into the next one with your paint. But just stay out of the lights. That's all I want you to make sure. If you're saving some lights, save them. This leaf is dark back here. This whole thing. So I'm just doing kind of like, if you think of the value scale that we did at the beginning, I'm just putting in like that first box of kind of light value in here. And there's nothing else. Oh, that was the brown. I don't want that. This is dark here. This is going to be dark back here. Okay, and now look at these top, if you look at this top leaf here between this and this, and you say, which is darker, the leaf or the apple? Look at how that leaf right up here, it's way darker, but not this side. When I get to there, the apple is darker than the leaf. But part of it on the top, the leaf is darker than the apple. So I'm going to do that. And this is actually pretty dark right down in here. So let me get that. And let's do the same thing with this leaf. Is the leaf darker than the apple, or is the apple darker than the leaf? I think this stage I'm going to paint a good amount of that leaf and just see. Okay. So now I have this, and it's just a little bit glare. I'm going to actually stick a book underneath my drawing paper so that the paint runs down a little bit. That's kind of important. All right, now, if we were doing this right, I would let this dry, but we don't have time. So, and I don't have a hair dryer, so I'm just gonna take a little more blue now, and I'm going to strengthen the color on my palette. So I'm adding more pigment to my water. All right. If you have a scrap piece of paper, you can test it and say like, all right, is that darker than I just did? I want it to be a little darker, but I don't want it to be like super, super dark. Okay. So I'm almost creating like a value scale here in paint. I have light, then I have medium, and I have dark. All right. So now let's go back here and look at, let's just put in some of the shadows and see if we can just kind of pop out this whole thing. I'm going to start up here, and I'm going to make this a little darker than it was in the beginning. And then I'm going to strengthen this because this is really a pretty dark shadow here. Now, I really need this to be dry to make this work. Where is it? And because it's running into that next one that's meant to be light, I'm drying my brush off, and I'm going to pick this up along the edge. I want this light. I'm going to see if I can just get it to not bleed in quite so much. So with watercolor, if you're new to it, you can put it down and you can pick it up again, right? So all I'm doing is I'm kind of absorbing that paint, and then I'm dabbing it on a paper towel so that it's dry. And then I come back, it's almost like a sponge, and I'm trying to pick up along that edge so that the paint doesn't run down quite so much. Right now I got to go back in here. This is, let's see, but I want this to be dark right here. That little shadow. And now look at between these two. This is really dark right here. So you see, what we're trying to do is just sort of like build out the values here and make this whole thing really take shape just with value, no color. And again, it's like, this is a very, it's sort of a simple technique, but it's really worth practicing. First of all, when you practice something like this, it forces you to see the values and to say, is that darker than that? Is this darker than here? How do I know that that's coming forward? How do I, like what's happening with these values? And it also gives you a chance to practice some painting skills. I think I'm going to come over on this leaf here. I think the top of this, again, it's a little darker, but it's kind of got an interesting shadow. That's behind. All right, let's get a little more in here. This right under here, really, this is very dark. So this leaf below here is one of our darkest ones. And when that dark goes in, it's going to make the apple it's going to pop it right up. And then it's really dark right in here on that edge, because that's in shadow too. So see how just putting that dark in makes that apple come forward in a really nice way. And there's some shadowing happening here too, which is a little bit detailed. I might not do that usually for a little while. We can also kind of, this is dark right here. It's dark right down in here as well, where this leaf is hitting. And it's dark along that edge. Probably not that much. But it can be, especially in the summer when you have really good, strong shadows. I would encourage you to just try doing like a shadow painting. And don't worry about anything else. Don't worry about the color. Just paint the shadows. It could be shadows of plants on a sidewalk or a boardwalk. It could be, could be any kind of shadows, but it's fun. Okay. All right, so there's even, you could just paint a little bit behind here too. Looks like we got a little bit. So you can see where, I'm not particularly neat tonight, in part because I can't let the paper really dry, and this isn't meant to be like, a beautiful finished painting. But, here, like, okay, so in just a few minutes, we were able to block it in and figuring out some of the values, like it really just pops the whole thing out. So I'm going to just put this final shadow in if I can over here, because I think it's dry enough. I spilled it. So, mainly we just have a couple of values in here, but it's really like you can start to really see how we're conveying a sense of light in this piece. And then actually, this is super dark back here. I wanted to get that. All right, so Bethan, you're going to kill me because I've like thrown in so much stuff. It's an hour and a half. I feel like, we're doing speed painting, values, all this stuff. But I want to make sure I take some time for additional questions in the next couple of minutes and see if this like makes sense to you to like try something like this of just stripping out the color and working on the values. A lot of botanical illustrators start this way, and they actually, maybe in colored pencil, they come in and they just put in they put in the values of the piece in like maybe a gray or a brown colored pencil. And then they come back and they put watercolor on top, or they will put colored pencil on top with the color. And then the values are underneath it and they come through. So I think it's just kind of a cool, thing to try, of just putting in the values and seeing like, all right, suddenly these apples sort of take shape without a whole lot of stuff.
Absolutely. I think this is just so valuable. I love the way you have been just asking yourself that question again. And it's a simple question, but so powerful. What is darker than what? Where is the light coming from? And even when you did that tiny little dark on the grass beside that mushroom, it just came out. It was astonishing. Yeah. It's such a really powerful tool.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then you can, so then like back to this idea of, why did we do the apples? Maybe you did it because you wanted to learn about different apple varieties, and you could add that all into the sketch. Maybe you did it because you just love the sunlight, and then this conveys that. So there's just a lot of different ways that you can play with that, with adding those values, with what you value in your sketchbook, with why you're doing it, and with the light and darks on a page to really sort of bring things to life.
Absolutely. I love the idea of taking away the color aspect and just using one color, just using blue for the apples, just to see the values. It excludes all the other complexity of what color to use, and you can just really drill down on the values.
Yeah. Good.
There's a lot of love for you in the chat. Everybody's had a great time. They're enjoying all these amazing ideas and tips that you've introduced. Thank you so much, Jean. Yeah. I don't think does anyone have any last minute burning questions? Write them in the chat or use the raised hand and we can ask them.
Yeah, definitely. And while that's happening, I'll just say, I do have a blog at Jean Mackay Art, and I'm also on Instagram that way. So if you want to follow me, just look me up that way. And I often will do some tips and techniques along with the journal pages that I post. So there might be just some little thing that you can take away there, or you can always feel free to ask me a question, and I respond to all the questions that people ask on the blog. I do teach some workshops online through Winslow Art Center, and I'm doing a series this summer of 4 workshops that I'm calling the Savoring Summer Sketchbook Series. And so they're just standalone things. You can do all 4, you can do just one-offs, and there's like 1 a month, 2 in August, I think. So feel free if you want to. That information is on my blog too at Jean Mackay Art, and it's just under the workshops section. So so I hope this was helpful and fun. And I'm going to get off of this view right now just for the last minute and go back to the gallery view because I just want to see everybody again.
Yeah, great idea. That was absolutely incredible. Everyone's been having such a good time and learning a lot from you, Jean. And I just want to say a huge, huge thank you for your generosity, for being here and all that you've shared. I feel inspired. I'm ready to go out and just look at values for the rest of the day.
I hope it's sunny. But even if it's not, they'll be there. Yeah. Thank you so much. And it's really, again, it's nice to see some friendly, familiar faces and also some new folks in the group. Thanks for joining in.
Thank you everyone for being here. So we have a lot more coming up this evening, my evening, which will be, I think, in for you North Americans who are about to go to sleep. It won't be appropriate, the timing, but we've got Ayoka Kaiser is going to talk to us about sketchnoting. So keep an eye out, keep your eyes on your inbox, because if you're signed up to the newsletter, it'll all be there. And all these recordings will be up on the website very shortly after they're finished. So if you want to revisit Jean's workshop, it'll be there, and all the others. So thank you again, everyone. Jean, thank you so much. It's been amazing.
Thank you, Beth. You're doing an awesome thing here. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. I've been hanging out for, as I said, for attending one of your workshops in person, and I just love your style. I feel very relaxed after that. Your style is very calming and yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much.
All right, great. Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate it.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
Happy sketching. Bye.